Gran had gone into town that morning and purchased 3 kilos of plums. Tori and I poured them into a bucket and ate the flesh until our bellies were swollen. We lay on old sheets on the veranda until it became too muggy, and we folded them up and slept on the wood. Tori sat up. She woke easily and often, and watched the girl walk through the yellow grass. She said, "That's Helen." I didn't sit up but watched Helen with sleepy eyes. Her limp was visible even from far away. I was 11, and Tori was 15, and I guess that made Helen 16 that summer. Blenheim is made up of steep dirt roads and turkey nests. Gran's property is in the centre of Blenheim, and the hills on either side make me feel like I could sink into the earth and only my sister could find me. On the school holidays, the only person we saw for months was Gran. Occasionally someone from the council would come to check our fencing or how we were treating the horses or for asbestos. We followed them for the whole visit, Tori offering tea and Monte Carlos and me grinning. When they left, Gran must have felt sorry for us because we were allowed to have any biscuits that they didn't eat. Most other days we did our jobs, dust, mow, feed the horses, and then Gran left us to ourselves. We'd pour green cordial into cups and go under the house, crawling under the stilts to where it was dark and cool. The dogs lay under there to escape the heat, and we threaded our fingers through their fur and lay our heads on their warm bellies. We drank our cordial slowly. Both Tori and I will have backaches when we're older. Me because of periods, and Tori because she never bends her knees when she lifts heavy things. Tori doesn't get her period and she can never have children. A doctor told her the September before that summer with Helen. She told me the night after, both of us curled up in my bed. I put my hand on her cheek and she let me keep it there for a while. Sometimes my sister would go somewhere and I'd not be allowed to follow. I'd watch her walk into the valley, her pink t-shirt growing smaller and smaller. I'd sit on the veranda and wait for her, and I'd put my face into my knees. I'd remember. When we were kids, we wanted to be blood brothers. Someone told us that for girls, we must lick the back of each other's neck once, a dab of thick tongue on skin. We walked up to the house, crawled under it, and lit candles. To make the moment ritualistic, I made Tori drink tea from my china cup, though hot liquids make her nauseous. We licked our necks 3 times. The back of my sister's neck is soft and salty like butter, warm like molasses. Helen lived on a dairy farm on the property next to us. Everyone in Blenheim had heard of her, and most people in larger towns like Gatton and Laidley and even Toowoomba. She had an accident when she was 12. She was swimming alone in the dam, and her leg got trapped between rocks and a bit of barbed wire fence that someone had tossed in there. She was under for minutes, and worked so hard to get free, her body moving in fierce jerks and pulls, that she dislocated her hip and tore 3 ligaments in her knee. The leg was mauled, the flesh skinned and bruised like a peach. No one here has money for physio or rehab. We saw her try to walk through the hills in the afternoons. She wore heavy joggers and a broad-brim hat. She limped through the valley with her unanchored hips, and we watched her stop to stretch her leg. The scars were raised, jagged lines from her hip to her ankle. Her mother brought her a chicken coop and 4 chickens right after it happened. Most days, Helen sat beside the coop and watched the chickens wander beneath the pawpaw tree. One chook nested frequently, and Helen picked her up gently and stroked her before putting her down. One day I saw that there was a downy chick. Helen held this one for the longest. She sat down on the old camping chair next to the coop and put it in her lap. Tori watched the chick closely. She watched Helen hold the chick up to her cheek, and she turned to me and she said, "I bet that feels warm and fuzzy." One day Tori said, "Let's go see Helen." "Why?" She pinched the thick skin above my hip like a mango. We walked to the dairy farm. Our thongs rubbed between our toes and caused blisters. Helen was standing beside the coop. She was wearing her heavy joggers and shorts. Most of the scars up her leg were white, but a few were purple. She'd just finished painting the coop yellow and had strong Christmas lights across the top. A bum bag was tied around Helen's waist, and the downy chick sat inside as if in a pouch. Tori stopped a few metres from the coop. "Hey, Helen. How do you know my name?" "We're neighbours." Helen watched us carefully before plunging her hand into the bucket at her feet and scattering feed into the grass. The chickens pecked at the earth. Helen moved back to watch them but didn't sit down. I lowered myself to watch the chickens sitting cross-legged in the dry grass, but Tori grabbed my arm and yanked me up. Helen pretended not to watch. "What's your chick's name?" Tori asked. Helen limped back to the coop. She opened the nesting box and lifted a chook out of it. The chook was pale and still. Helen kept her hands over the chook's wings and kissed her head. She put her on the ground and nudged her until she started moving around the yard. Tori watched the chook before she walked to the nesting box and looked at the eggs inside. She ran her hand over the cut-out cardboard candy canes stuck to the box. Helen turned to walk back to her house. I fell into step beside her. "Why did you nudge that big chook?" It was a while before Helen answered. Every few steps our shoulders bumped together. Helen spoke quietly. "When chooks nest, they go into a trance. Won't eat or drink if you don't snap them out of it." "I like that big one." "Me too." "How does that little chick stay in your pouch?" We were close to her house. I could see that the fly screen door was left open. "How come she doesn't fall out?" "Dunno, I walk pretty fast." It took me a second to realise that Helen was making a joke. I smiled back at her, and then Tori grabbed the chick from Helen's waist and kicked hard into her leg. Helen buckled and fell. The chick made a tiny squeak. I started to yell, but Tori said, "Run." I remember seeing thick grass seeds stuck to the back of Helen's socks. Helen got up and tried to run after us, but she couldn't move fast. She screamed the chick's name again and again, but I don't remember the name that she said. After a few minutes, Tori slowed. The cicadas were loud. Tori put her hands on her knees, and I realised that the chick was still tight in her palm. She didn't look at me. She opened her palm and looked at the chick. The little downy feathers were sweaty and stringy, like she'd just been hatched. I was dizzy, and I squatted down and put my head between my knees, my knuckles pushed hard into my eyes. Behind my eyelids were shaky lines, like the heat above the earth. I remember that my sister and I used to run after the council members when they left our property. We would run after the women and men, screaming, "Take us with you, take us with you. The creek is thirsty, the land is dust, the sheep are windblown. Take us with you." Thank you.